Maybe you could like have some thoughts on this. Like one of my projects was sent to like Spike Lee's people, and they
Mhm.
really liked it. But like, it's not something Spike Lee. He doesn't like work on finished projects. It's like
Mhm.
not probably just not quite the exact thing he's looking for. So like, they like me, but like not the project. So like, that's a win.
Inside Man 2?
That's cool. I would love it. I'd love to. Yeah. So that's cool. That's like a win. But then like the next like advice you get is like, well, just show up to their office. Like they just need to know you. They just need to like. But like what I'm understanding a little bit about this industry is like, it's not. It's not so well respected to kind of like you have to go through certain channels or you're really not taken seriously, like through
Mhm.
the agents and the managers. And also, I think the thing that really bums me out is like it doesn't seem like there's much I can be doing besides his company just having different intentions. Like they like the material, they like the writing. It's just not they're just not gonna do it.
Mm.
Like I'm not sure what I can do besides write good material
Yeah.
for the right
There
people.
are things.
Yeah, so tell me.
Have you considered becoming trans? Which some people have told me that helps.
I don't think.
But that's not the answer.
So well, the messed up thing is like at this level, like
if you showed up with a mangina to the office, you are in. No, here's the thing. Here's the real
Yeah,
answer.
let
I'll
me
tell you
hear.
the real answer. Being talented, being creative, having good stuff is necessary, not sufficient.
Mhm.
Necessary, not sufficient.
Mhm.
You're competing in a pool where there's a lot of good stuff.
I lost
Presumably,
out, I
there's
lost out to Nathan Fielder on like a producer,
Great.
which is cool. But
compliment
but what
to
do you
you.
do about that?
So you have to, I think, recognize it's not the problem isn't my creative output.
Yeah.
It's getting the validation it needs. Great. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
Because there are plenty of people where they'll get something and they finally get it in front of somebody and it's not ready to be read. There's a lot of technical work that needs to be done. And that's not your issue. Good. Now the hard work begins. So the hard work is the social aspect of it. Most of these final opportunities become solidified and crystallized, in my experience, because somebody's like, oh yeah, why don't you call Michael? I just had coffee with him the other day at this thing. We were at some get together. We were at this thing where you formed a relationship or a connection with somebody who could eventually make a project move. The social game is the other half of it. In other words, the relationships that you form and the sort of good vibes you put out in terms of social connections with these people, relationships with these people. You're getting skeptical, but let me
No,
finish.
I'm listening.
In other words, a lot of some of the stuff that happened musically for me, what changed was not necessarily that the music got better. It's just that it was digested and consumed from a place of trust from the person receiving it. Because I met this person and then formed a little bit of a relationship and established a little bit of a connection with enough people that, yes, I think the music did get better too, but that wasn't the game changer. The game changer was, oh yeah, I know Ami. We have a little bit of some sort of rapport, and therefore that makes it through the filter of everything else. So that when the opportunity does come around, I'm the person that they're thinking of, or that in that serendipitous way say, yeah, actually, I do have a thing that it could work for. Spike's team loved it, but they're not interested in that. But you know who I do know? This person. And you guys should meet. So it's that serendipity is really just, it's a dirty word, but the network. It's making yourself present on the radar of the people who could eventually see your projects to fruition. And it sounds calculated and a little bit, dirty, but it's not. It's just everybody, there's an understanding when you're working in an industry where you're not just trying to make friends, you're trying to have relationships with people, but everyone's trying to do something. There's a larger macro creative agenda, trying to make films or TV or short, visual media projects, whatever you're trying to do. That's a given. So in that, you have to just make and establish relationships with people that will eventually do it. And it could be that your relationship area is suffering or is not as existent.
Well, that's for sure. A friend of mine, Lawrence, said last week, he said most problems are people problems.
Right.
And what you need are people solutions.
Right.
So he's like, instead of writing for a day, think about what you could do to find people solutions.
So in my early days, I was going to the Billboard Film and TV Music Conference just to meet a bunch of people who, when the time came, could be somebody I could solve a problem for.
You know what my problem is though? When people meet me, they like me less.
No.
I think that's my problem. I'm joking, but I'm not. I don't like networking at conferences is like not my strong suit, especially when I don't have much to offer. I used to love it when I was working in startups, and I was in a position at a startup where I could like help other people. Like I could make a partnership, or like I knew a lot of people. I could introduce people. So going to these events was awesome because I'd meet someone and immediately be like, how can I help you? Oh, you need this, like, and then all of a sudden, like, it's
Right.
like it's a great interaction. When I'm the one looking for something,
Right.
I find it very difficult
Sure.
to make a good impression. I don't know.
Yeah,
How do you feel about that?
Because you have to let go of the idea that I'm here for someone to try to get me something. I'm just here to make friends.
Yeah.
That you know how to do. You know how
Yeah.
to like make an impression that's not a creative impression. You don't have to think like that. You can always tell the noobs and the overzealous people from established people when you're at these conferences because people who are kind of new and green are handing out cards. Yeah, and they're dropping what they're working on right away. And the people who are a little less, who are not as overzealous,
Yeah.
are just talking. You forget, we're all human beings. We're all fans of writing, and in my case, music. You get past that initial like everyone fronting. It's sort of like the development of one's personality.
Right.
You know, you learn how to like when you go through adolescence, you're like you're trying to showboat all the time, and then you realize, can we all just relax? Like you come back to your sort of pure self of I'm just a regular person with regular problems just like you. And most of your conversation should not be about shop. Because it's a given that you're there.
Right.
You're at a thing. They know you're up to something. So talking about family, kids, life, everything else that you know how to discuss with anybody, that should be the medium and by which you like engage with people of your industry. It's much more effective that way because then who are they gonna remember? All the people who pitched them crap?
Right.
Or I like Michael. That was a nice talk. We should get together. Yeah, listen, follow up with me, man. That was you're a
Mark?
good dude.
Mark? Yeah, I'll give you a call.
Or just like let's get together next time you're in New York, or I'll come to LA. We'll touch base. You form a relationship. I wouldn't even say a friendship. Like friendship, sure, maybe that's even further down the road. But a connection, a relationship that's human, is much more impactful for your career than having it just based on shop.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't start that way. Human beings just don't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I run up against,
and you find those stories happen all the time before you, like, how did it end up happening that you got cast in this and this? Or, actually, we met at this thing. We were, and we started like just hanging. And then we were just like, It turns out he's a great actor. It turns out I'm a great writer. It doesn't turn out that way. It was always the case.
Right.
And it's not accidental that they met up, but you know what I mean?
No, what you're saying is objectively true. And like, I have no argument against it.
And that's episode 20, ladies and gentlemen.
No, and it's something I need to do. COVID's made that difficult.
Of course.
But no, it's something I definitely need to be working on. I think what I run up against is I still, I guess I believe on some level is like, truthfully, regardless of the relationship, there are just certain industry and like business considerations and circumstances that just sort of make certain things impossible. Like it's impossible is a big word, but like no matter how much someone likes you, the more famous person is going to get the deal, just because of like the way the industry works now is like IP and like pre-existing markets or just everything.
Yeah,
and
I don't buy into that much because I just think that's ultimately like until all of a sudden, it turns out the industry was one way for 5 years and then all of a sudden it changed. I don't know how that happened.
Until all of a sudden, right? So like,
so you want to be there and you want to
right.
be the until all of a sudden.
Right.
There really are no rules other than how did all those people get famous
Right.
before you? What do you think happened?
Right.
They weren't. How did they beat the famous people before them based on that logic? Because when they started, they weren't always famous.
No, well, it wasn't. I mean, the industry does shift. Like 7 years ago, it wasn't quite the same. There was stuff being bought that wasn't intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
Like it just almost doesn't exist now.
What?
Like
Can
meaning,
you define that further? What you're talking about?
when you turn on Hulu, Netflix, and TV, maybe not broadcast TV. When you turn on Hulu and Netflix, I would say 9.5 out of 10 of the shows you're gonna watch are based on an article, a book, or a celebrity's life. Like meaning, like if you're writing original stories out of sort of whole cloth, they're simply just not being produced.
So check out this future headline. So it turns out what happened with Michael Weber and the reason he took off was there was so much saturation of intellectual property content out there and people were sick of it. I think people were just craving intellectual stories. That's the only way I can explain why Michael Weber ascended to writing superstardom, because what you were able to do, I'm being hypothetical,
So,
but you see what I'm saying?
So I think the best argument against it is, like you said, just like when it does shift, you want to be there.
Yeah. And there's a concept in entertainment of just the undeniability of something. So At the end of the day, any executive can have their opinion, but they only know so much, and that oftentimes is very little. They know almost like they're in the game at the same time that something takes off, so they ride with it. But you'll find that, oh, it turns out they thought they knew all these things, and they were the establishment authority until everything changed, so they just went to that. Oh, well, now how it is, everyone wants original. Nobody wants it. Like, that's out of, out of, whatchamacallit, out of the trend.
Style.
Out of style. The point is, you have to be the one responsible for your output, and that output means everything, creative and social. Because I think people forget that the social aspect is like I said, sufficient, necessary, not sufficient for the talent, but what comes in front of that is the social game. So the social game happens, that opens the door for you, that forms the connection, and then when they get behind the door, they have to see something good. Otherwise, you've just made a friend, fine, but you haven't made something that's going to form into a bigger creative opportunity. So it's like dating. This whole game is dating. You want to get married. You want someone, you keep proposing to people and saying, marry me, marry me, marry me, marry me. And they're like, I mean, you seem like a good guy. The stuff is good. Everything looks good on paper, but I'm not ready to marry you. You have to date. You got to work the motion. Bam! Or the ocean. Bam! I think that's the best way to formulate the argument or the case I'm making. You have to date before you get married. So what you're missing out on is you're trying to skip to marriage, which is like a commitment to your project in a real way. And you got to date the person first. They have to get to know your sensibilities. They have to get to know all these things because there's a lot of trust they're bestowing in you. And they're not even, it's all subconscious. And then they're going to be like, I used this producer over that producer, or this writer over that producer, or this engineer because I kind of liked him. He had the skills. So did they all did. Who won? Who's the one who got picked in the pot? It's like, we had a connection. I don't know. I got a good vibe. And most collaborations and successful ones work that way.
That's a good idea. My manager's idea was that I pretend to be a German heir and just like throw money around and say like my father has a trust fund, like rents like expensive hotel rooms.
This is a joke.
Have you seen Inventing Anna on Netflix?
No.
Oh, it's really good.
No.
I mean,
you watch way too much TV and I watch way too much nonsensical
every
content.
episode is an hour and a half. It's crazy.
Oh my God. But that's my chizuk and my advice. That's my advice. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I like that.
And I think for a lot of people, it's useful info because I like looking at it that way. Date before you get married. Your people are set. When you hand out a card, work with me, sign me. I have the skills. I have the talent. That's like walking up to a girl and saying, I'm husband material. Let's do it. You might be. You probably are. But you can't expect her to, or him or whoever. Can't expect that significant other to jump right on board without establishing rapport and relationship that works.